In chess, as in life, we are quite often primed to study the wins, assuming that a win, especially from the best chess player in the world, Magnus Carlsen of Norway, that these wins will give us the keys to the knowledge of how we too can become great. My supposition for you is this: there is just as much to be learned from the losses. Today we are going to be studying a recent loss from Magnus Carlsen, a great reminder that even the most talented players in the world, sometimes even the most talented players in history, can make blunders, can make mistakes, and can lose games. Two players, even with an ELO score that is over 50 points lower than theirs. It looks like there were 3 games played from this player against Magnus Carlsen, 3 10-minute rapid games. 2 of them were draws and 1 was a loss. A loss by resignation, I should add. So let's see what this player did that was so smart enough to beat Magnus Carlsen. So we start off with Magnus Carlsen white bringing his white pawn onto d4. Next, black advances their black knight from g8 to f6. Magnus brings out another white pawn to c4. Black brings out their pawn to e6. And Magnus follows suit and brings out his knight to f3. Now black puts forth a potential exchange here, bringing their pawn out to d5. So now white could capture this pawn, but they are protected by black's pawn on e6. Magnus instead chooses to bring out pawn to g3. Black advances bishop to e7. White advances bishop to g2. Black decides to castle. White brings out their queen. Black advances pawn to c5. And you can see there's a lot of symmetry in this game already. Now Magnus decides to take the black pawn, putting himself directly in the line of attack from black's bishop. Instead of taking Magnus's pawn, black brings out the black queen to a5. This puts the king directly in check, but because so many of white's pieces are out, the king has many places to move and also has multiple pieces that can protect him. He could bring down the knight, he could advance forward the bishop, he could even choose to sacrifice the queen, putting the queen right in front of the king there. I don't think that he'll do that. Magnus chooses a sensible move, bringing out the white knight from its origin space to c3. Next, black captures its first piece of the game, advancing pawn to c4, and Magnus immediately follows that by castling. Black queen advances to c5, and white's bishop comes out to e3, directly threatening the queen. The queen flees all the way to the other side of the board onto h5. Magnus develops another knight to e4. Black develops bishop to d7, and white queen captures black pawn on c4. Next, black captures one of Magnus's knights on e4, and Magnus responds by directly killing that same knight on e4. Black's bishop develops onto c6, threatening the white queen, and white queen moves forward a space to e5, directly threatening the black queen, escaping from the black bishop, and protected by the white knight. That protection has now come to an end as the black bishop captures white knight on f3. But in the hustle, the white queen has now been able to capture the black queen on h5. And now black, remember, the winner of the game has lost their queen. So not only are they facing the best player in the world, a player that has a higher ELO score than them, but they've also just lost their queen and they still go on to win this game. Let's see how they do it. Magnus loses his queen. Black bishop takes the queen on h5. Opponents are taking their moves rather quickly. You can see on the time clock, we've got 6 minutes and 49 seconds for Magnus's opponent, and we've got 6 minutes and 43 seconds for Magnus. White brings their bishop out to b7, or I should say advances their bishop to b7, excuse me. Black brings their knight out to d7, and white captures black's rook. White's bishop is immediately captured by black's rook on a8. White develops pawn to f3. Black develops knight to b6. White moves the rook out to c1. Black develops pawn to f6. White threatens but does not take black knight on c5. Black bishop moves back to protect black knight onto d8. And white rook moves to d1, now joining the white rooks. I've heard multiple grandmasters say that once your 2 rooks are joined and your king is safe, you're likely to win the game. You have a higher statistical likelihood. We'll see if that's true. Or actually, in this case, we know it's not true for Magnus. Black retreats. Its bishop is now on e8. Both black bishops are joined. Again, a lot of symmetry in this game, mirroring white's rooks. White advances pawn from b2 to b3. Black king getting in on the action, advancing to f7. The king is pretty well protected. Between the bishops, the pawns, the knight, and that rook, that black king is very, very protected. White king also advances onto f2 and it is protected by that white bishop. Black knight moves out of danger and is now on d5, but is immediately threatened by white pawn on e4. Now black and white here are battling for center of the board, which as we know is another great indicator of who will prevail in any given game. Black knight retreats to e7, and white rook advances to d6. Black pawn develops to a5, and white bishop immediately threatens on b6. White bishop is immediately captured by black bishop on b6. Black bishop is immediately captured by white rook on b6. Black rook advances onto a7. White rook advances up to c5. Black bishop getting in on the action on d7. White king advancing to e3. Now both opponents have about 5 minutes left on their clocks here. Black knight kicks back to c8 in order to threaten the white rook that is on b6. White rook counters and immediately threatens the black knight onto b8. Black knight is kicked down to d6. White pawn advances to f4. Black pawn advances to h6. White pawn advances to g4. Now 3 pawns equally in a row like this can be a little bit dangerous, but also offer a line of protection. Black king moves to e7. White pawn advances to h4. Now Magnus has 4 pawns in a row here protecting the king, along with 2 rooks. I mean, his king's pretty well protected, but black has more pieces, has more material. Black knight kicks back to e8. Instead of taking Magnus's knight and then getting killed by the king, white decides to advance to g5, pawn advancing to g5, now threatening 2 different black pawns. It is immediately captured on g5, and immediately that piece is captured on g5, and again on g5, and again on g5. Now all those pawns have just been subsumed. Now that black knight is coming back down again, it is just alternated back and forth seemingly the whole game, and white king now moves to f4. Black knight moves up again to f7. White pawn advances to g6, almost to the end of the board, and now threatening the black knight. Black knight is kicked back to d8. White pawn advances to e5 with protection from white rook on c5. Black bishop moves back and is in line to kill the white pawn. It is moved back to e8, and the white pawn is on g6, so it's not looking good for this white pawn because black could kill and not be killed immediately back. But now the white king has stepped in to protect, because if the black bishop takes the white pawn, then the white king could take the black bishop, and the white king has moved to g5. Black rook has moved to d7. White rook has moved to a8. Black rook advances downwards to d2, and white rook advances upwards to c6. This put the black king in check, and now the black bishop has come down to defend. Black bishop now on d7, defending from the king, which is on e7, which was being threatened by the white rook on c7. Now, white brings down another rook onto a7, giving double strength to the attack against the black king. Things are not looking very good for black, but remember, black does win this game, so let's see how they did it. Black brings up the black rook to d5. Magnus brings the white king to f4. Black king moves backwards to e8. White rook is now on a8. It's really not looking great for black in this moment, so it's so interesting that they end up winning the game. King moves back to e7. Black king. Rooks again doubled on 7. On the a file and the c file, we have 2 white rooks that are threatening the black king. King moves back again. It seems like it's just going back and forth. But time is starting to run out. Look, both of our opponents have around 2 minutes. The opponent that wins, though, has 2 minutes and 45 seconds. 45 plus 7 second edge over Magnus. Magnus continues bringing up his white pawns. He now advances a white pawn to a3. Black rook now moves down to d4, which put the white king in check. The white king retreats to f3. Black rook moves back up to d5. White king is on the run to g3. Black rook threatens again on d3. White king is on the run on f2. Black threatens again on d2. White on the run again and now threatening the black rook on e3. Black rook retreats again to d5. White king threatening again on e4. Black knight to c6. White rook to a8. Black king running from check to e7. White rook to g8. Black rook to e5. White king to d3. Black rook to d5, putting the white king in check again. White king to c3. Black king to f6. White rook to f8. Black king running from check to g6. White rook developing down to f1. Black knight now advancing to e5. White rook doubling back to a7. We're going to run out of time in this segment of the video because I only set the timer for 10 minutes, but we will rejoin right where this game picks up in the next video. All right, so we're breaking down the end game of a recent loss by Magnus Carlsen, who is the #1 chess player in the world and who has won the Chess World Championship many times. He's widely believed to be one of the greatest chess players of all time, but even the most talented people in the world make mistakes, sometimes have losses, sometimes have draws, and we're looking at a recent loss that Magnus Carlsen had, a 10-minute game with the hope of learning from some of his blunders, seeing how his opponent, who has less of an elo score than him, was able to dominate this game, leading to a resignation from Magnus Carlsen. So when we left off, White's rook had just advanced to a7. Magnus's opponent has 2 minutes and 21 seconds left on the clock, and Magnus himself only has 1 minute and 7 seconds left on the clock. Black advances rook to d3, putting the white king in check. The black rook is protected by the black knight on e5, so the king can't just take, it has to run. King runs down one space, still threatening the black rook on d3 in the event that the black knight has to move for whatever reason, giving the king an easy capture. But black rook immediately flees to d5. White's pawn advances to a4, and black's knight advances to c6. This black knight has just really kept within these 9 squares, it seems, for the entirety of this game. It has done an excellent job playing defense. White rook, which was threatened by that last move, then flees back up to a8. Black knight advances down to b4. White king threatens the black knight on b4 by moving to c3, and is immediately put back in check on d3. White king moves up a space, still threatening multiple pieces onto c4, but ushering itself to safety. And black moves up to d5, preventing rook from attack by its pawn, which is in close proximity. White rook moves across the board to g8. Black rook does the same, moving to g5. White rooks now both on the f-file. Black bishop moves down to c6. White rook now moves to e1. Black bishop moves down to d5, putting the king in check. The king runs to b5. White bishop moves down to b3. White king is now on the run, moving up to b6. Black bishop moving up alongside it to a4. White rook, keeping the king protected, moves to e6. This also puts the black king in check. Black king flees from check all the way to h7. White rook runs from capture to f4. And very interestingly, we've been seeing a lot of repetition at this point in the game. Magnus's clock is running down. He's only got 44 seconds. His opponent has 1:57 and is moving very quickly. In this 10-minute game, he has a 1/5 of his entire time left, whereas Magnus has less than 1/10. Magnus is in a good position to protect his king with 2 rooks, but because he has no pawns, it is very unlikely that he could in any way get out of the constant onslaught of these other pieces. The black rook, the black knight, and the black bishop are likely to at some point pick off one of these rooks, making the protection of the white king even more difficult. And to add insult to injury, Team Black has 2 pawns, which could advance likely into queens, thus ending the game by checkmate. So Magnus has probably made calculations at this point in the game, the statistical likelihood that he will lose, that with these 3 pieces, he just doesn't have enough material advantage to win the game. And so, unsurprisingly, the game ends by resignation, and Magnus's opponent has bested him. Now, it should be noted that Magnus's opponent is also a Grandmaster. These are 2 players who are at the top of their game. And while Magnus has a higher elo score, more titles, and has won more games than his opponent, it just goes to show that anyone can become the greatest player of chess in the world, if even only for one game, and it is possible to beat the greats, and that they are mortal, fallible humans just like everyone else. I think a lot of times with these really excellent players like Magnus, who is a really excellent player, people think that they're absolutely perfect, that they're unbeatable, that they never make mistakes, and this is just reinforcement that anyone can make mistakes, anyone can have an off game, anyone can blunder, anyone can be outplayed or out-leveraged, or have a player who has better tactics, or who is, over the course of a long 10-minute rapid match, which isn't that long but feels long when you're in the heat of the game, that they can even two-best the best player in the world. So I hope this was informative to you. I hope that you observed some interesting tips, tricks. I hope that seeing some of the formations that these players made were interesting to you and might apply to your own chess game. If you found this video interesting, I would love if you give me a follow. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. I am still very early on in my chess journey. I am very proud to say that just in the past week, my ELO score has increased by another 100 points. I have been playing games, I think, since I joined chess.com back in July. I've played over 600 games of chess from players in 84 different countries. So I feel really proud of the progress I'm making, and videos like this where I'm breaking down games by great players really help me as well. So I hope they help you. It also helps me with chess notation, because by forcing myself to say out loud the movements of where the pieces go over time, I get more and more familiar, and I don't have to actually look at the rank and file, and I can just like see a square and know where it is. So it's helping me do that practice. So I hope I hope that is helpful for you as well. And yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want me to break down specific games, let me know. If you want me to break down historic games, if you have questions about how chess works, just let me know, and I would love to help in any way I can. All right, y'all. See you next time. Bye.